is Guardian Radio, your station for up-to-the-minute news, intelligent, interactive, and engaging conversation. 96.9 FM. The views and opinions of the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the position of the management and staff of Guardian Network.
My name is Sam, and I don't mean no harm. He said with a blink, please buy me a drink. My pocket's out of sync.
Good yawning this morning. Welcome to On the Clock with Erin Greene. If my alarm clock serves me correctly, it is Wednesday, the 30th of June, 2021. It's the last day of June. It is the closing of Pride Month, so you know I'm a little excited. But more than that, you hear that song my producer played this morning? Froggy, say correct? Well, I gotta be the luckiest woman, the luckiest person alive in the Bahamas today. Because on my way to the radio station, I buck two flamingos chilling out on the side of the road. Now, when I say chilling out, obviously they was up to something. They was up to something, because first of all, they was not where flamingos supposed to be. Second of all, it looked like they was traveling, but I ain't see no bags, I ain't see no passport, I ain't see no travel visa, I ain't see no vaccine card, I ain't see nothing. And then somebody said to me, them flamingos may have escaped from Adastra Gardens, right? So I say, oh, Lord, I don't want to be caught up. I don't want to be complicit, aiding and abetting in the two old birds escaping. Because, you know, I was an old bird. I ain't in the three score and 10 gang yet. I aiming for that. But I still is an old bird. And I didn't want to get caught up in that. Because you could get caught up in the police dead easy, you know, for nothing at all. You could just be a bird, minding your business, doing what birds is do. Fly, like not get captured, like just... I have wings. Why would you expect me to stay here? That don't make no sense. Anyway, that means good luck. So if anybody know about birds, flamingos, or luck, or I don't want to call that word because I'm a mathematician, but that ain't the word I call it, then today is a lucky day. Play something somewhere. Play some hopscotch. Play some jacks. Play some numbers. Do some math. But if you win, share your monies with everybody. But not everybody. Don't share it with me, because I only can buy mangoes with it. I could be honest, I have reached my mango quota for the week. I got the belly, not just once, because that's not the test. The test is if you get the belly twice. The first belly is just healthy cleaning out of your system. But if you get it twice, then you know you have reached your quota. Anyway, guys, this morning I was supposed to talk a bit about the politics in the paper because there is so much. Bannister defends Hasty, says he'll meet with Union and BPL. See, the first part of that sentence, I thought me and Bannister was going to have to be friends because I'm a Hasty and he defending Hasty's. But then I got to the second part of the story and then I realized that it was I who was confused. I mean, not just me, but there's a lot of confusion in this story, particularly the part where Bannister says, let me give you some context. Among other issues, Wilson called on the government to remove BPL CEO Whitney Hasty. But Bannister said, Hasty has brought innovation to the corporation. Quote, I don't think that you just take something on face value as being what really the challenge is, he said. Remember that confusion I was talking about? That's it right there. Dear DPM, I don't know what you mean by innovation. Like, if you mean because of a lack of access to power and a lack of certainty when that lack of access would occur, that people have had to become innovative with their lives? Is that what you mean? You mean like we live in a 21st century world with look at me with 2017, with 1985 infrastructure, and we have to innovate to be able to do the things that regular people do, like know when they can wash their clothes and put them on and dry them, or if they have to put them on the line, things like that. Is that what you call an innovation, sir? Is that what it is? Are you talking about the solar park out at the stadium that we're not sure if anybody's using because you have cars parking under it for licensing exercises? Is that the innovation you're talking about, sir? Or is it the fact that after, I don't know, I'm 45, I've been living in the neighborhood I'm in for almost 40 years now, not, longer than that, 42 years now, and still, I have to call BPL to tell them when my power is off. That's not the best part. The best part is I have to employ all of my customer service skills to deal with the people at BPL that are upset that I am bothering them again to tell them that my power is not on. But let me tell you why. Because my neighborhood, like the grid, the area that I am in, is not connected to any monitoring system. So you don't know when the power goes off in my neighborhood. And you don't know when you restore the power, but my neighborhood doesn't come on, right? Like I still have to call you and say, hey, you did a good job. I could see my neighbors in the distance, their light on, but my light's still not on. Is that the innovation you're talking about, sir? Because there's plenty of people in your control room who are tired of hearing my voice. And I guess it's the shame attached, because they don't really want to talk to me, but they realize they can't do their job unless I participate as a volunteer who's not getting paid. I don't even get to be a part of the Legion of Doom or the Legend of Doom or whoever those boy them was who create their own little sporting club inside BPL. You know what I'm saying? But is this the innovation you're talking about? Because let me tell you what's innovation. How them two flamingos escape Adastra Gardens. That's innovation. How they get to Nassau from Managua faster than Bahamas Air. That's innovation. That ain't innovation, sir. Anyway, there's a lot in the news, and I unfortunately will not be able to touch on it. Dear Honorable Diagula, you get a pass today. LOI, Renwood Wells, you get another pass. You get a pass today too. LOI, don't know what's going on in Bimini, but I think I have an idea. And I don't think it's a resort. And if it is a resort, then we get bigger problems, Bahamians. We get much bigger problems. Also, my last note before we get into the show, this is something that I was supposed to mention throughout this week because it's Wednesday and I've seen it every day so far this week. That's Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. I'm going to beg, in this moment, I'm going to beg the drivers that feel it's appropriate to park on the sidewalk on Cumberland Street. Let me tell you why this is a heinous and disgusting thing that you have decided to do. See, the way that the bus system works, right, is that people have to get off the bus at the top of the hill, Blue Hill, where it meets Cumberland, right? Like they're not allowed to get off the bus just anywhere anymore. So most times the people have to walk from the top of Blue Hill Road down Cumberland Street to either go left and west or right and east to the next set of buses. If you park your truck, your big truck, even your little tiny car on the sidewalk, that forces pedestrians to walk into the road. Now, as we know, despite the fact that we've had at least one traffic fatality on Cumberland Street in the last few months, and y'all supposed to know that, y'all still think it's appropriate to force pedestrians to walk into the road in that particular space. But I can be honest with you, the sidewalk is not for your truck. It's not for your car. That's not what it's for. Stop being lazy and stop being disgusting. Poor people have to walk in the road to survive. You just park in your car on the sidewalk to be lazy. Think about it, please. Well, good morning. and welcome to On the Clock, where we have conversations that help us understand and navigate a rapidly changing Bahamas. Today's show is brought to you by the Department of Inland Revenue. Let's pause for a financial minute. Did you know the new Public Debt Management Act 2021 aims to provide a modern and comprehensive legal framework for promoting greater clarity, discipline, and transparency and accountability in public debt management operations in the Bahamas? This new law comes into effect July 1st, 2021. This financial minute has been brought to you by the Ministry of Finance. Good morning to my guest, Mr. Matt Aubrey. How are you?
Good morning. Very good. I didn't see any flamingos this morning, but I heard tell of a woman who did, so
Well, look
it
here,
must be pretty good.
The luck is rubbing off on you already.
Hoping I'm in right proximity.
Well, listen, I've asked Matt to join me today to talk about mechanisms for accountable, honest, and transparent governance as we approach our 48th independence celebration.
And I think, this is something folks would hear us talk about at the Organization for Responsible Governance for the last 6 years. Obviously, this is something that's important for us. But I think what you just talked about before in relationship to the citizens' usability of government rings why this is critical. So transparency and accountability, which we all believe philosophically, right? You want those who run government to be above board and to do things in an honest and a straightforward way. But it all translates down to the kinds of day-to-day actions and circumstances that we deal with. So the thoughts of why you got to walk in the street, around a bus, comes from some decision process that happened on high that came down without thinking about what are the day-to-day realities there. Mm-hmm. The challenges or the comments in the paper related to our experience with BPL. They maybe have made many changes or moved forward on certain things that we will see down the line, but it hasn't changed the understanding or the reality of many folks here in the Bahamas. And that process of what it means to the citizens spikes to why we want to talk about a fair and accountable government. Mm-hmm. It ultimately is the citizens' tax money that goes to fund the government. It's the folks that they would have elected to represent them that drive those things, and it's the folks whose salaries that are paid by those tax monies that are in place to ensure the betterment of the citizenry. So somewhere we're missing it if it's coming down to the fact that on a day-to-day basis, you're saying, well, they sure didn't think about me here in the street.
Here's a perfect example. Just yesterday, people were complaining, they were critiquing the shift in the police record system, mm-hmm. right? So now it's cashless, you go online, but people are saying that once they've completed the online process, when it's time to go and pick up, they are standing outside for hours, right? In a disorganized line. Mm-hmm. And I said to somebody, well, let's look at it like this. Let's identify the problem that they were trying to solve.
Right.
The problem I think they were trying to solve is a potential loss of cash, right? Like there's a potential maybe pilfering or corruption. Let's take it cashless. Then we take out this whole cash part and nobody have to touch cash. And I think that was the central issue that they were focused on resolving.
Well, our work in anti-corruption would show that technology is a great step forward, but it's also a critical step towards the usability as we talk about. But what's challenging is if you create a system without including those folks that use the system, it can be, with the greatest of intents, can fall apart. Right. And that's experience. And recognizing that we're changing to a technology, which many folks have been calling for, right? They don't want to go and stand in line. They don't want to have to be prey to somebody who's trying to get tip money to go and do the basics of what they were supposed to do. However, we need to change and grow along with the movement towards technology. So there needs to be education. There needs to be a hand-holding at first to be able to say, this is how we're going to move forward with this. And you need to plan that effectively, or unfortunately what you have is people's first experience becomes really challenging, and then they go back the other way and say, well, it was better the way it was. And the reality is it may be much better the way it's going to be, but we have to be a part of that process.
Right. And sometimes being a part of that process is just somebody saying, hey, this is phase one. Mm-hmm. Trust that we will have phase two completed in 2 months, in 3 months.
And I think trust is an interesting word because I think one thing we we have a lot of things here in the Bahamas, but I'm not sure we have a tremendous amount of trust. I think that there have been decades and decades of challenging governance and strained relationships between the citizens and their government, so that when new things come out, even in the best of intentions, there is not always the trust to back it up. So I think when we make plans now and we talk about making them actionable, right? There's not just a great idea, but we need to now make this thing real. We need to realize that there is a process of engaging trust on both sides. And the steps forward have to build that trust in the way you would build it with any relationship. So if you're rolling out a system, you've got to do more education. You've got to get into those neighborhoods that you think this is going to be where it's going to have the most difficulty. You need to go to the Family Islands and say, well, we're doing something centrally. We're going to get to y'all, but here's when that will be, and here's how it will be. And when those promises are made, then the problem becomes, if you say you're going to do it, and again, it doesn't happen for 3 to 6 to 9 months later, you've lost the opportunity to really engage that community.
And if you're sitting back saying, oh, we'll get to them Family Island people when we're ready.
Right.
Well, they're ready now. And they're accessing information that was designed for a New Providence or a Central Island community. And they're reading that information, and you've lost buy-in right there because they said, hold on, this doesn't apply to my community.
Right.
How is this going to work in my Family Island? Y'all don't understand what y'all doing. And they've disconnected from the idea right then.
So when you talk about the mechanisms for transparent and accountable governance, one of the biggest is the engagement of the citizens or citizen participation in governments.
Right.
And that doesn't mean that every decision government makes goes through weeks and weeks and weeks of scrutiny. It means that there's regular mechanisms in place that allow citizens to have a say, to get information, not just to have to follow it up or read it in the newspaper, but it's provided on a front-loaded basis. So just to reinforce, you did your financial minute. Well, that's great, because now the citizens are getting a little bit more information. The public can understand, okay, well, what does this thing mean? But we also want to know, why is public debt management a thing we should be concerned about? Are we thinking about the fact that much of the tax monies we pay go to pay back these huge amounts of loans? Are we thinking about the fact that our debt has ballooned to a level that it is so high that we need to work on processing? So this step forward, having a plan, having legislation that says we need to get ourselves together, is a very big step, is a huge step. It gives us a sense to say, can I have trust in a process, because it's going to make sure that my kids and my kids' kids aren't left with the remnants of a country because we had to pay everybody off and we couldn't do anything innovative, as we talked about.
Absolutely. So the government, well, let me ask, straight out ask this. Do you think, or do you know, has the government achieved any of its campaign promises in reference to political reform and reform in governance, like campaign finance, term limits in the Integrity Commission, the Office of the Ombudsman, FOIA?
So all of those have moved a little bit.
Okay.
Is what I understand. We would have passed freedom of information. It's been an extended period of time, but recently there was hired a commissioner, information commissioner, and a deputy commissioner, and they're in the process of establishing their office and bringing on a consultant to help us to path the way forward.
They need to, because I need to find out the recipe for the guava cake from Traveler's Rest. Right? Like, that's no, for real.
I don't know that you can get that. I think that's proprietary information.
Cultural treasure that I need access to, but go on.
And I think that when we talk about so that has moved, but hasn't moved quick enough, I guess becomes the challenge. And first off, we got to put a big stamp on, we understand, COVID happened. Dorian happened. Blacklists happened. So a lot of those things became key priorities that had to be addressed. But it doesn't, to my mind, say that there was an opportunity to really move forward with these things, because ultimately, although these other things are the immediate cut, we have some long-term injuries that need repair. And that's what a lot of these pieces of legislation go for. The Integrity Commission Act or bill and the Ombudsman bill. So the Integrity Commission would establish an independent body that would be populated most by private sector and civil society folks to receive instances or concerns related to corruption. So anytime we feel like folks are not doing, like the government folks or people in government are using their power inappropriately, there would be an independent body to be able to receive those. It also had given them the opportunity to not only receive those, but to vet them out, determine whether they had merit, work with the independent deputy of public prosecution, which was a piece of legislation that this administration did move forward and pass, to ensure that these things are followed through to conclusion, whether they be found to be valid and ultimately in the judicial side, or they're found not to have merit and then publicly determined here's why they don't
Right.
stand up. All of that would have taken away a lot of the political rhetoric that we see, and cases that go on and have these political undertones, so the citizen doesn't know anything. And I see the National Review that says, Peter's no better than Paul. I think that's what a conclusion we're all coming to, because it becomes either this side of the fence or that side of the fence.
Yeah.
We need to understand, how do things really work in a more simple way. This act would have established a really clear opportunity for us to say, how do we reduce the impact of corruption, which takes $200 to $500 million out of our economy on a regular basis.
And that's just the money side. Let's talk about the psychological, the sort of psychic and collective, the damage to the collective psyche that occurs when corruption takes place, right? Like when we smell the smoke, we're certain that something is smoldering, right? But everybody keeps insisting there was never a fire. Right, and so then one party says, "Oh, we'll find the source of that fire when we get in."
Right.
And then when they get in, they're like, "Oh, I think somebody passed gas because it smelled like smoke, but it wasn't really smoke." And the damage to the psyche, the collective psyche, is, I think, even more damaging than the little bit of money.
And if you read through the Auditor General's reports, and I think that by and large, he and his team are doing great work. I don't think they're appropriately resourced yet to be able to do all of what they do. But when the reports come out, there are regular instances where monies have been issued, and either the work was not done, or they wouldn't follow the right procedure, or the selection was unclear. And to your point, that perception that something's going wrong is actually in some ways more destructive. It reduces our competitiveness. It reduces our capacity to feel like the services are actually rendered. It creates the opportunity for us to be more likely to try and go around the system, because we feel like the system isn't going to be fair anyway. So how do I take care of mine? All of that reduces the amount of effect that comes out of government. And this act, which was first read and issued and put on the table in November 2017, has not moved since. So think about 2017 to now. How many times have you picked up the paper and said, man, what's going on here? Somebody should figure this thing out. And it gets lost in the political rhetoric, or it goes off to the side. This would be an opportunity to reduce that. Similarly, the same day, then Minister for I think for the state, Minister of State for Financial Services, Ellsworth Johnson, tabled the ombudsman bill. And the ombudsman would set up almost a public advocate, so a representative for the people in government, to vet out when you think things have been done incorrectly. So maladministration, right? So you're going in and you're asking for this certificate or get this information, and you feel like they didn't treat me right, they didn't give me the information, they're giving me a runaround, or it shouldn't be, I feel like they're treating me with discrimination. This is a place where you could go, and independently they are there to represent the citizens. That, again, could reduce our comfort, could increase our comfort and increase our trust in a system, because we feel like somebody is there looking out for us.
And ultimately, hopefully, it could lead to the most awesome thing, which is public service and civil service reform, which I know that public servants and civil servants want in their heart, right? It ain't about penalizing people. Matt, we got to take a break, right? I got to bring in my guests on the second half of the show. We're sort of carrying on this conversation. And when we come back from the break, I am going to ask you which piece of legislation you think that the government can move forward with less than a year before the next election. And then quickly, I'm going to talk about how to train a government.
Okay.
All right. Arlington, take us to the break. You're listening to 96.9 FM. You're on the clock with Erin Greene and Matt Aubrey, and we will be right back.
about that time. So tell mama to be ready. Tell it to the whole family. The rock the 242. The count depends on you. So tell Ted to go tell below. Mark it down on your calendar. Since it's 2021, this one's for everyone.
Like what you're hearing on the show? Want to support the conversation? Sponsor On the Clock today. Call Janet Lees at 302-2304. That's 302-2304. Be the solution. Sponsor On the Clock with Erin Greene, where she dissects, we discuss, and you decide.
Crystal Cruises is setting sail for the Bahamas once again. Crystal will follow the strictest safety protocols as guests travel to Exuma, San Salvador, Long Island, and more. With a commitment to keep communities and guests safe and protect the environment, Crystal's decision to homeport in the Bahamas will boost tourism and support the local economy. Learn more at crystalcruises.com.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
Good morning and welcome back to Guardian Radio 96.9 FM, your station for fresh news, smart talk all day. You're on the clock with Erin Greene and Matt Aubrey, and soon joining the conversation will be Alicia Wallace and Kadisha Trico from Equality Bahamas to extend this conversation. So, Matt, the question I asked before the break was, which piece of legislation you think the government has the best chances of bringing to fruition before the next election?
It's a tough question because I think we know we want stuff done as quick as possible, but I think the Integrity Commission bill and the Ombudsman bill could both be brought forward. They've both been laid in Parliament. There's been enough time to look at those. We've done a lot of communication related to this in the public. I think there's an understanding of it. So I think this could advance forward and hopefully is on the agenda early on in when the Parliament regains in September. I think bringing freedom of information into full effect can happen and should happen. And I want to say that the caveat to all of that, though, is anything can happen if the public then demands it. So what we don't want is just pieces of legislation that are passed because the government feels this may be politically beneficial to have said, oh, we passed this thing. And then it sits there without being developed. And we've already seen that with freedom of information. It's going to be getting citizens to be able to talk to their representatives when they come around talking about your vote. What do you want to see? What kind of movements do you want to see? Do we want to have an independent body to receive and reduce corruption, putting back 200 to 500 million into our economy? Do we want to see that there's an established independent representative that's going to be in place to represent your interests as you're dealing with government? That's the ombudsman. So let them know this is entirely not just an opportunity for you to be fed what they want you to do or what they say they're going to do, but for you to dictate to them, this is what we would like you to do. These are priorities for me. And org is actually through our launch of the Year of the Active Citizen campaign, which you can check us out on Facebook at Org Bahamas Foundation, or check us out at orgtransparency.com. We are going to be developing a pre-election kit to help folks make their vote matter. So what are different types of systems and questions you might be able to ask folks about when they come and talk to you about, I want to be your representative? How do you sit down and have those questions? How do you help yourself to be more comfortable in questioning when stuff's just given to you through a manifesto? How do you look at things more critically and have a little more basis to understand, so that if you feel that the transit issues are critical, great, then this is how you can help to develop that. So that kit will be coming forward. So folks, please join us and follow us with what we do. We have our Freedom Fridays session that comes up, and this not next Friday, but the Friday after that, we will be talking about how citizens can interact with government, how we can engage in policy. So a lot of the conversations we're having here will have a place to do that. So please watch and call. It's participatory as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. like gods, we get the governments we deserve. That's why I govern myself. and we are encouraging everybody to engage in the process of governance and take on a part of this responsibility. Because at the end of the day, what we may find out is that governments are not failing because politicians are lazy or greedy or corrupt, but government is failing because there are too many gaps that are not being filled by the citizens.
We have a short tagline, which is get informed and get involved. And people will do that if you feel like it's going to benefit you. And if you feel like it's going to be a waste of your time, you're not going to. So our hope is that we reinforce and encourage folks to realize that getting involved at this level, at the basic level, expressing your dissatisfaction, identifying what the priorities are to you, and telling those folks during an election time, you never have more power than now. So
Absolutely.
this is where it can actually matter. This is the people that are the folks who want to represent you are listening and listening hard right now.
Absolutely. And this is a great segue into my next session, because my guests, Alicia Wallace and Khadisha Trico from Equality Bahamas, are here today to talk about two projects that they are engaging in. And I think I'm going to let them introduce it and tell us what the name is of the project. But good morning, ladies. Good morning, Alicia and Khadisha. Are you there? All right, while we're waiting for them.
Erin, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay, I'm
Awesome.
sorry, just a little bit of technical difficulties, but yeah, I'm here.
Absolutely, and this is Khadisha.
This is Khadisha, yes.
All right, so Khadisha is currently studying at University of Arkansas, pursuing a PhD in public policy. I like to say producing, because that's what you're doing, you're making it, with a concentration in social justice. And she became interested in this work through self-reflection and thinking about the ways that she's experienced both privilege and oppression living in the Bahamas versus those same experiences in the US, particularly as a person with a disability and experiencing culturally how many different aspects of her identity can be leveraged to privilege or deny persons like herself opportunities or experiences. I am pleased to have read that full bio, Khadisha, and it is a pleasure to formally meet you. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me this morning.
Absolutely. So tell us about this new project by Equality Bahamas.
So yeah, what Equality Bahamas is doing is what it's pretty much always done. Equality Bahamas loves to engage the community. And so currently, we are trying to produce a set of feminist standards for governance.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, again, it's community-based. So really just sourcing the most important needs that, the vulnerable people in our societies, the experiences that they have, things that are important to them, trying to center those needs so that they can be well articulated and very explicit to the politicians that, are representing them. And so that's pretty much the basis of it, is trying to, it's like, Matt was saying, is trying to engage the public, engage the community, so that, as we're moving forward with a new government, we can ensure that our needs are being met and they're not just making promises, false promises, empty promises that they're not standing on.
Absolutely. So, Khadisha, I have some very quick, basic questions for you, right? Because you use a word that I think is going to require some clarity. What are feminist standards? Now, let me start here. I know that feminism is the belief in social, economic, and political equality of the sexes. And we could see with this latest appeal court's ruling that when everybody thought the feminists were only focused on women, that one of the bills in the constitutional reform exercise was solely centered on the man and the child's right to pass on citizenship and to have it passed on. So, I know people are going to get a little like, oh, this feminist thing, but what do you mean when you say feminist standards? And what's in it for men? Because that's really what a man want to know. What's in it for them?
Well, I think everyone can really benefit from feminist policy making in general. I think people are a little bit thrown when they hear feminism, immediately it's gendered, right? And so ironically, what it's doing is trying to make sense of how we have basically constructed the society we live in, how power operates with certain within certain categories, or how power basically is assigned to certain categories, how certain people are constructed, how they are basically how we allow power to basically operate in society.
And if I could use the Winder case again for a quick example, when we look at society and we look at men, and it's, men and women are telling men, oh, you all have everything, you're not being oppressed, you got the best of it compared to us women. And then men would turn around and say, you know what, I used to think that for a minute. I used to think that until I had a child out of wedlock and couldn't pass on my citizenship. And now I realize that there is this space in my life where I am greatly oppressed, despite all the power I may have in the other parts of my life.
Well, to what we were talking about before, though, I think what Khadijah speaks to is not only philosophically valuable, but practically, right? So when we talk about a gauge of are things fair, we're looking at, over 50% of the Bahamas is women. We look at who our representatives are and how they constitute. It's such a small percentage related to that. And what research does show is that when a government is more inclusive, it's more representative of its population, you have stronger democracy, you have greater economic development, you have higher opportunities for more folks. So creating that balance and that better understanding of the circumstances that we're in and what we want those who rule us to govern us rather to follow, because it's aligned with the interests of the people, is actually, it makes sense for all of us, and we will ultimately all benefit from that.
Absolutely. So, Khadijah, tell us about, this Feminist Standards for Governance 2022-27 is a sort of a document that you're creating in a two-part process, right? The first part is a survey, and the second part is a collaborative working session. Can you tell us about both of these parts?
So the first, so like I was saying, we really like to get the feedback, as much feedback as possible from, the wider community. And so that's kind of why, we put the survey out ahead of time, just so that, as many people from as many different, walks of life can kind of chime in, even if they're not available for that collaborative session, which is on July 7th at 6.
And so the survey is open now for contribution.
The survey is open now. We've been trying to share it. You can visit our Facebook page. It's up. There's links for it. And then the collaborative session is pretty much like a workshop where, and we've done this before, Equality Bahamas, where we basically have small focus groups. They're kind of like focus groups where persons, about 5 will gather and we just talk about brainstorming, pretty much is what it is. It's brainstorming, what the issue is, what we think the root of the issue is, how can it be addressed, what are maybe some recommendations that we can provide for, the elected officials that we'd like to see manifest.
So let's give the audience, right while we're on it, let's give the audience the links to connect to the survey. Is it tiny.cc/feminist standards?
Yeah.
For the survey.
That's to register for the Zoom session where we'll be doing the collaborative work. The link for the survey is tiny.cc/feministsg.
Okay.
As in standards for governance.
Okay. Sorry, I took them down incorrectly, but I got them down, and so does our audience. And we're going to repeat that one more time before the end of the show. Good morning, Ms. Wallace. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So once you guys have created this document, right, who is it for and how can we use it?
This document is for the people. And that's why we make sure that our first step is not to sit around a table together. 10 of us can sit down and draw up policy together, and that's really easy. But we want to make sure that this is a community-driven piece. And that's why we're bringing people together even if you can't join us for the session, you can use the survey to put your thoughts down so that we can develop some really solid recommendations. So at the end of the day, what we'll have is recommendations from people on 7 thematic areas: health, education, women and LGBTQIA plus people, social services, youth, environment, and labor and the economy. And once we have people's thoughts on what the issues are and how we can address them, we're going to turn those into very clear, specific actions for the next administration to take to move us toward equality. So this would be a document that we use throughout the election season. During elections, political parties come out with their documents of promises, right? And they tend to be pretty vague, and they tend to be what the political party's priorities are, what they want us to believe their priorities are. So participating in this process is an opportunity to set the agenda. So this will be like a people's agenda, a feminist agenda for the next government of the Bahamas. And we'll be able to use this to gauge where potential MPs are. So when candidates come to talk, they usually come with their agenda. This is a tool that residents can be equipped with to be able to have conversations and see where people stand, where candidates and where parties stand on issues that actually matter to us, and get clear on what they would or would not commit to doing if they were to become a part of the next government of the Bahamas. And then, of course, during that 5-year period, we still have this as a document that people came together to work on to say, these are our priorities. This is the standard. The standard is not the empty promises that you give us. The standard is what we as a people want.
LOI could get behind that. I got a text here, right? And the text says, it's a bit firm in its critique, but it says, anything to do with feminism, return to sender. And she is right. Just by the fact that the name is gendered, it will be rejected by many men and women, believe it or not, right? And I think the text is just ensuring that we are aware of some of the well-entrenched stigma that exists in our society. But I want to say to my audience and to the public, look here, training a government is like training a parent. First of all, you got to be polite, no matter what it is you're telling them. Second, you can't rely on the GG, because that's like grandparents for nothing. The police are your friends, but they known your parents much longer than they known you. And your only recourse is the courts. And even then, if your name is Blackbeard's Key, you're out of luck. So you need as many tools as possible. You need as many tools to hand to assist in this process of engaging and training your government. So don't let the word feminist turn you off of something that could be an excellent resource for you. First of all, remember, use a Bahamian, use a chameleon and a pirate, use people things and make it better. So if you don't like the word feminist, go get the document and redact. That's when you block out. And we're going to get used to that word once we see the full enactment of the Freedom of Information Act, right? But that's when you block out parts. Just block out the word feminist and then follow the sentence. And trust me, it's still going to make sense. Because feminism isn't what you think it is. I know what the text is saying, but it isn't what you all think it is. Feminism is ensuring that men and women are treated both equally and with equity, which means you acknowledge what they each need separately and you make sure that they could get it so they each have the equal capacity to perform. That's what the vibe is. Anyway.
Yeah, and it also looks at the differences in our identities beyond gender, right? Because there's also abilities, there's also class, there's race. There are all these different intersections of identity that affect the way that we experience the world. It affects, the forms of oppression, and as Khadisha was talking about earlier, the forms of privilege that we have. So there is an aversion to the word feminism, and part of our work at Equality Bahamas is to change that and to help people to see it in a positive light and as what it truly is. And if people are looking for an example of feminism or what feminist policy looks like, we went through this process in November to develop policy recommendations to end gender-based violence. And there's nothing bad about that, right? Like, we need to end gender-based violence. That's a feminist issue. So if people want to know what this might look like, I think it might release some of those fears. So definitely check out our policy recommendations to end gender-based violence. We have that available on our Facebook page at facebook.com/equality242.
Mm-hmm. And listen, for those who are sort of like, well, gender-based violence and feminism, this ain't about men. but it is. Because all this week and last week, I've had young men on the show talk about their experiences, right? And I've seen all this month young men talking about things like being called gay because they refuse sexual advances of women, right? Like, and it ain't even like the woman got all fancy and wrote him a letter and invited him on a date and, put on perfume, women them rubbing up on you in the dance, right? And men are being called homosexuals because they refuse to engage with that type of predatory behavior. That's gender-based violence too, because the assumption is you as man and you like this, so take it, right? And that's just not on. It's not acceptable. So I want men to see that this ain't us versus them kind of vibe. This is we need each other to ensure that that we are safe, each and all of us. So please tell us again, give us the details around the survey and the comprehensive working session, how we can get in touch with Equality Bahamas, and what training training opportunities are available for people who are interested in this work or want to learn more about what it is that you're doing.
To participate in the survey, visit tiny.cc/feminist S as in standards, G as in governance. It's a pretty open-ended survey. There are a few demographic questions at the top, and then we ask very broadly, what are your recommendations around health? What are your recommendations around education? And we go through 7 thematic areas there. And you can choose to talk about 3 themes and leave out the other 4, whatever is of interest to you, whatever you're thinking about, we're happy to hear it. And then to participate in the collaborative working session, that is happening next week, Wednesday, July 7th, from 6 to 8 p.m. And then it's all on Zoom. To register for that event, go to tiny.cc/feminist standards and join us for that Zoom session. We'll be having sort of an overview of what feminist standards are, what that means, the thematic areas that we're looking at. There are 3 critical areas of concern that we'll be looking at in particular across all of those thematic areas. So those are gender-based violence, climate change, and disaster management. So those are issues that are cross-cutting all of the thematic areas. So we'll talk very generally about that at the beginning, and then we'll have a few rounds of small groups visiting different thematic areas to talk about some of the issues, teasing them out and figuring out what we need to do about them and moving us towards solid recommendations that will go in this document.
I think it's critical what y'all are doing, because you need to create the space for folks to come together. I think in these instances, people tend to see themselves as alone in the wilderness, and the reality is there are lots of like-minded folks out there, and there's spaces, and this is a very open one, even in the nature of the way it's being operated, to give you a chance to express your thoughts and your ideas and bring them together collectively. And there's a lot of power in that collectivity.
Absolutely. I got another text here. It says, and I think the text, it's worded a bit difficultly, but I'm going to read it. Erin, people keep thinking that opposition doesn't know what y'all say it means. It's that people don't see that as what it is actually. For in practice, via their actions, history, and selectiveness of focus. I think what the text is sort of saying is that we may not be correctly understanding where the opposition to the use of the word feminism lies, right? And that in their lived experiences, right? It's about maybe their opposition is about the selective issues that are focused on.
Well, left to its own devices, things will just perpetuate. So people use a word or term and they kind of roll it forward and they use it incorrectly, and then that carries forward. And I think it's the key to this opportunity. I think people should really take advantage of it. Is it's a time to stop, break that down, learn, adjust, make sure that you understand what these terms are, but what the opportunities are for you to connect into, because what you're looking to push forward may very well be found within this space.
Right. And I feel that, like literally feel it and see it in my space in the advocacy world with LGBTI advocacy, because the truth is, the vast majority of people do not use terms like lesbian, gay, homosexual, to define themselves, right? That's not a part of their identity. And so when somebody like me come on talking about the lives of gay people and lesbian people, and even those members of the community are sort of like, I ain't quite sure what she's talking about, because I don't think of myself in that way. And so it's important for me to become rooted in those communities in a sort of safe way. It's not intrusive, to get a better understanding of how people think about their own lives and use those expressions to inform policy. And that's a part of why this collaborative session is so important, so that we can hear people say what they're feeling with their own words and then bring that back to the government. And so I want to ask you the same thing, Matt, as we're closing out. What opportunities does org have coming up for people to engage in training or in sessions to better understand the work you're doing and the role that they can play in it?
Well, we're currently in the year of the active citizen, which has many resources on how to get involved, how to become a stronger advocate, how to interface and interact with governance. So check us out on Facebook at Org Bahamas Foundation. Check out our website, which is orgbahamas.com, or check us out at the Citizen Solution Center, which is full of all those resources, which is orgtransparency.com. And we also want to make sure that there are opportunities for our civil society groups together. So we're actually very excited that we're going to be working with Equality Bahamas going forward to develop opportunities for civil society organizations to be more grounded in these terms, so that they understand how these link back to their missions. And when we're putting forward a more progressive and reformed agenda, it should be reflective of all of the citizens and all of those challenged areas. So make sure that we go forward all together.
Absolutely. We're at the close of the show. I want to let the audience know that today is the International Day of Parliamentarianism. Right? I ain't quite sure what that is, because the stories say it's a focus on democracy and ensuring that the people are centered in the process of governance. But I think it could be the celebration of 2 meats, 3 meats, 4 meats-ism, and an improper and skewed allocation of national resources. I think that's what it could be, but I ain't quite sure. I want to thank my guests, Alicia Wallace and Kadisha Trico, for joining me this morning from Equality Bahamas. You guys still there?
Yes, thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I'm sorry you couldn't come in studio. I had 17 mangoes here, but you ain't here and you can't have none. I'd like to thank Matt Aubrey for joining me this morning from Organization for Responsible Governance.
Thank you, and I will enjoy my mango.
And I hope that he didn't get it. It's real. And I hope that people reading the papers today and then this week in particular can use the information that they heard today to help them inform their opinions, but also help them direct their critiques and their concerns and their questions, because it's up to us, Bahamas, to make this country work. It's just us. Tomorrow, we're talking trees and hurricane preparedness. And right now, it's time for Levan Miller and Unleashed. Have a great day, Bahamas.